the channel built by Ben, and welcome to this week's episode of the Dream Decking. We're on episode 6 now, and in this episode we're going to be looking at what we do to the joist before we lay the composite decking, how to cut the composite decking, how to lay it, how to picture frame the decking, and then we're going to get a sneak preview of what's in the next episode at the end of it as well, so make sure you hang around for that. So if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring the bell next to it as well, so you get notified of all my videos. Also, if you can like the videos, comment on them and tell your mates about it, that'd be great. Cheers. Okay, so the first job to do is to get this decking protection tape down. Really good one, this one. Found it super sticky. Even when the joist, which is a little bit moist, it's still stuck down, which is great. But I'll stick a link to this one in the description if you want to get hold of any. They make it just wider than the joist, which is good because then it goes over the top and down the sides a little bit. And all that does is just encourages the water not to stay on top. If any water does stay on top, it's not actually affecting the wood. Because as you know with deckings, that's the place where they rot. The water sits in between the boards and just gets stuck there on top of a joist and starts rotting the top out. So yeah, that's the first job. I won't show you all of it because that was a bit boring, but I actually run out of tape on this bit. That's why there is no tape down at the moment. So whilst I was waiting for more of that tape to come, I started picture framing out the steps. Quite a simple process really. I've just mitered them corners that you can see on this front end here, and you can see I've supported that bottom joist now with my rod system that I used for this decking, and all you're doing is just making sure that miter's nice and tight, and you want to be checking with a scrap bit, or I was using the demo piece there, because the vertical one that sits underneath that has got to come flush with the top one. I'm finishing this decking with some nosings, so they're corner nosings. Some people just leave an overlap, or some decking companies actually offer a board that's got a solid end on it, but these ones didn't because of the clip system that they used. They don't offer an end one. Which was a bit of a shame really, because I would have liked to finish it like that, but they do these ones with a 90-degree angle nosing. This was Dino Decking, by the way, if you are buying them. Not too bad a company. I didn't like dealing with the guys on the phone. They're all pretty friendly, but they're all, you know, there's no favours, let's put it that way. I was about 8 pieces short at the end of this project, and although I'd spent about 3 to 4 grand with them, they still stuck a 250 quid delivery on for the other 8 pieces, which I thought was a little bit harsh, but they've got a business to run, so you understand. So we're just taping up the stairs here. There's quite a lot to tape up, but it's important that you just get all of them flat surfaces taped, even your noggins, because you just don't want anything rotting out, and as soon as it gets into that timber it'll just hold it there. And then we're just sticking some extra noggins in, because when you picture frame the stairs you need to make sure that that back end of the first bit of board is held, and you also need somewhere to put your clips. But we can see here I just went through the nosings using my angled nose as a guide. We just drilled through, stuck some stainless steel tongue tight screws through the front of here that will then be covered by the nosing. I'll put a link to these in the description as well, but I'll show you them a bit later in the video. You can see the installation is quite simple for these things. You just get a little clip. A bit later in the video I've got a nice bit of footage of how these actually go together, if you want to stick around for that. It just shows you up close how these things get drilled in and how they support the planks. But it's a nice little system, keeps it all nice and tight. make sure that you know none of the boards are going to move away from each other. And then you just secure them down and clip your next one in. When you're picture framing a deck, the only way I see possible doing it is to start with your picture framing and then work backwards. You do see some of these videos that they do the whole decking first and they overshoot the picture framing, and then they'll just run a straight line across all of them and cut it with a plunge saw or something similar. The only problem with this is I can't see a way of doing that, actually cutting all the way through it without then cutting the joist protection tape underneath. You can be as skillful as you want about it, but at some point you're going to just nick that tape, and if that tape is then right on a join, which it will be because that is where your picture frame's going, it will just encourage the water just to sit in there. So this is the way I do it. I put the picture frame down first, and then I just use a little spacer or something just to cut the other boards, the grey boards that run into it. We just cut them about 2 or 3 mil shy of the black one, and just do it like that. So we get more of this black tape on. You can see how monotonous that job is, but can't stress how important. And then again, just making the picture frame up for that top step, just treating it like a big version of the small step, using that scrap piece there to keep it the right amount away. And all we're doing there is just marking the back of the picture frame piece for the starter clip. So you get different clips for these. If you're going to be continuing the decking side by side, then you obviously put your double clip down so that it receives the next one. However, on this one, because that was receiving the ends of all of the decking, because we're running in a different direction, you actually get like a little end clip that just holds that back edge of the picture frame down, but they're still hidden. Dyno decking do offer 2 types of fixings. One of them is a 6mm gap, which you can actually fit the drill bit down, so you can put all your clips in and then drill it after your next one's down to clamp both of them in. I went for the tight fit one, which is a 2 to 3mm gap. And all that means really is that you have to put your screws in before you put your next bit of decking in, which I didn't really find a problem. I will admit, after about the 20th, 30th bit of decking, it did get a bit repetitive, but I suppose most decking is, so you can't get away from that. There's on a big area like this especially, I think we went through about 88 boards, 4.4 meters long, so it's quite a good amount of boards there that were cut. Quite a tricky project as well, because there was lots of different shapes, lots of different sort of intricate cuts. You'll see in a minute where we were going up to an angled piece of the wall, which all had to be cut and scribed in. But yeah, once them clips are in, you'll see me here just pushing them into the clips, getting that picture frame in its final position. And then we just go through the nosing again with these screws. So this was just putting the double-sided clips on, excuse the spotty boxes, and then using that little piece of angled nosing as a guide there. We're just drilling through for these stainless steel tongue-tight screws again, just to get that front end nice and tight. And then you just wind them in. These screws, they've got the tiniest heads on them, They're actually made for cladding and things like that, tongue and groove. You can put these through the face of tongue and groove and you barely see the head on them. But for this application, you don't want to go through the surface too much at all. You've really got to sort of, just tinker on the trigger there until it's just pulling it in. And as soon as you go through that top layer of composite, it's too late. So you don't want to go through that. If you do get one that goes through, then you want to just reposition one or put another one next to it just to hold it down. Now on the very ends of the decking here, you don't really get a clip for this, so what I decided to do in the end, just to stop that side from raising, was just to go for a bit of black CT1. So the CT1 just stops that little end from moving anywhere, because you can't fasten it down without seeing a fixing. Looking back on it now, I probably could have got one of them tongue tight screws down in the corner, but I didn't want to start putting holes in the tape where it wasn't necessary, so that's why I went for the sealant in the end. CT1, if you haven't used it before, is very strong. Once that's stuck down, that's not moving anywhere. I'll be very surprised if that ever comes up. But if it does, there's nothing then stopping me from going back and just putting the tongue tight screws in the ends there. One thing you've got to do in the building trade is you've got to stand by your work, and if you ever do make a mistake and it does come apart in the future, you just make sure that you go back and fix it. There's a lot to be said for that. There's a few builders that would just get the phone call and not bother, but any problems with any of my building work, I always go back and fix it. Touch wood, I haven't had a lot of problems at all. I think I've only had one callback ever, which was an easy solve, which was just a door rubbing on a carpet. I didn't take enough off of the bottom of it, so that's what happens. So we're just speeding through this process now of putting the decking down. I had to speed up a lot of this again. I think the entire laying process for all of this decking was about 23 hours, 24 hours working. So obviously I need to speed a lot of that up for you guys. You don't want to be sitting through a 24-hour video of me laying decking. If you do need to know any details that's in this sort of sped up section, do let me know. I'll get back to you in the comments. But you can see here that we're now going up to that angled wall there. That was probably the hardest bit of the project, was getting all of that right. You only had 2mm tolerance to make that look good, and if you got that angle just a tiny bit wrong, it looked really bad because you've got a light grey going up to a black wall. So what we had to do is take an average line. The wall was actually wobbly as well, which didn't help, so we had to take an average line across all of that wall and then mitre the decking to suit. And there's a little video in the final part of this video that just shows you the accuracy that you have to go to get that angle. And then as I went with this, we started to find faster ways of getting these clips in by just using the back end of the crowbar there. And the crowbar wasn't used to lift the board up or anything, it was literally because these little clips are thin metal and they started to shred my fingers up a little bit, so either using the claw of a hammer or the base end of that crowbar, just pushing them in before you screw them. Make sure they're in nice and tight as well, because otherwise your gaps start varying. And obviously with a decking like this where it's so wide, you get a 2 or 3mm gap at the beginning that's a little bit wrong. It's obviously going to be 6, 7, 8mm by the time you get to the end. So you've got to be nice and precise on a job like this. I must admit, from dyno decking, there were a few of these composite boards that did actually come out slightly smaller than the rest, so maybe watch out for that if you are planning on doing something like this yourself. I managed to use most of them on the vertical parts of this, so it wasn't such an issue, but if you were only doing a flat decking, that could pose an issue. If you're a perfectionist and you don't like your gaps getting bigger and smaller throughout the decking, yeah, I don't know, maybe there's some better companies out there than Dino Decking. I haven't used a lot of them. I think a lot of it actually comes down to colour choice from the customer, because they all offer slightly different greys, they all offer, you know, lots of different sort of shades of black and grey and all sorts really. So whatever colour the customer picks, you then got to find a company that supplies the right type of decking in that colour. And you can see me here, it's important that you note, if you are putting lights in this stuff, then you have to fit the lights as you go, because feeding the lights under this once you've laid it is almost impossible. I nearly found out when I forgot some lights over by the back of the pergola there. I forgot to put them in as I was laying the decking. I actually had to go and buy some of them electrical fishing rods to get them ones in, but yeah, you've really got to be careful when you're planning a project like this, because if you miss one thing, you could lose days. You'd have to pick all the decking back up, or have a very clever electrician that can feed things. You know, you do get them magic ones, don't you, that can just find a route somehow. These are really simple decking lights. You just drilled a hole in the top of the decking there and just push them in. IP66 rated, I believe, or IP67, which is dust and rain. I think IP67 can be fully submerged in water. I'm not 100% sure about that, so don't take my word, but just do your research. There's loads of different dust and water ratings on these lights. The reason I like these lights, I think they were called the Saxton light range for decking. The reason I liked them is because they got them little removable heads, so if any of them ever decide to turn off in the future, you can just change the head on them. And what I did as part of the project price was provided some replacements for the customer that he can keep in his cupboard. And basically, if one of them ever goes, he can either give me a call or change them himself. And then all of the wiring for that was then connected up to a box that I could turn on and off with a remote. So all of the lights on this decking are remote controlled, using one of the Wisebox electrical boxes. I'm a big fan of them. I've used them on a few projects now, and they're very easy to wire up, very easy to program. You get a couple of different sort of remotes, so you get one that you can take out onto the patio with you, and then you get one that you mount on your wall indoors. The switches are completely wireless, so you don't have to worry about getting an electrical install indoors as well. But yeah, great bit of kit, absolutely great bit of kit. I'll do a separate video on one of them at some point, because I really do champion them. I think they're brilliant things. Alright, so working back up to that raised bit of decking here, and so we're just picture framing that again. And when I did all the measurements for this, we made sure that them posts of the pergola were going to sit one decking piece back from the front, if you like. So when we actually built the joists, built the decking out, we had all of this in mind. So we knew that one of these black decking pieces would just fit with enough overlap to then take the vertical one underneath it as well. It is noggin city when you do it like this. When you do a picture frame, you've got to put so many noggins in on a little raised area just to catch all your little bits, and especially on this one with the pergolas there, because we had to make sure that all of the boards were supported all the way around it. What I actually did was left a few little gaps on the insides of these posts, just in case there was a bit of a water build up on there. It's just got somewhere to fall down. And then black ones are only sitting 2 mil away from the posts. Now the pergola had its own sort of drainage system, so if water did fall on the top of the slats, it actually goes into its own little gutter system and falls down the inside of the posts. So it's definitely something, again, that you've got to be planning for. What I did was I took a little bit of wood off of the joists underneath where they meet them posts, so that if water ever does go down the inside of them posts and comes out the bottom, it can then track away without touching any wood. You've got to be so careful that all of your water is just moving away from the area where your wood is, because obviously the whole idea of this is for it to last as long as possible, and the longevity of the timber depends on how much water is going to sit next to it. So you can see here a bit more of a close-up of how we screw the front of these picture frame boards down, using a bit of the nose in there as a guide, just so that you know that it will always be covered. And then we just tinker on the trigger there until we're sitting down nicely. Don't go all the way through, as said before. And then we're on to, or very shortly, on to one of the easier part of the decking, which was that bit on the right hand side there. So for that I could just cut lots of straight pieces, and here's a little close-up of putting them clips in. So you just push them in, and then there's a little lug on there that just takes the front of the next board, and they supply you with lots of black coated stainless steel screws that you can put into there. And all you do once you've got all of them clips in is you use your rubber mallet just to knock it back into it nice and tight. Keep some weight on the board. You can see I've got a knee on the board there, because otherwise the other end just pops out. So we're just going to jump over to this little bit here, just showing off that angle that we had to cut down that angled wall there. And then moving on to the higher part of the decking, a lot more simple. We just cut the boards all one length, and we actually kept the join up the back there because I knew that there was going to be a corner sofa covering that. So it was a lot easier doing it this way, and you're not losing any strength because we're not gluing the boards down and screwing them down as such. It's just that clip that's holding it down. But yeah, coming towards the end of the composite decking, like I said, if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. We'll just see the last bit of the decking here, the vertical bit still to come, and then the larch in the back is what we're going to be dealing with in the next episode. So I'll see you then. So